patients. The future is the present. Whatever we're doing now is the future for not only ourselves and our patients, but for the innovation of the world. So I'm an independent educator for Green Space. That's my disclaimer. I put a little blipid in the message if you ever want to communicate with me. My email is there. I've been a primary care doctor, DEA number, ordering CTs, MRIs, all that kind of stuff. And I've written 18 books, work on my 19th book. Strangely enough, it's on infertility, and it's taken 2 years to give birth to an infertility book. I don't know if that bodes well or not. So today we're going to talk about quantum physics. It's already been touched upon beautifully by a couple of presenters. But the question is, how do we get botanicals to deliver the most efficacious outcomes? And where's the research? So 20 years ago, a gentleman named Shafi in India wondered why was it that Ayurveda and the practitioners with their mantras and their imparting of medicine was the way in which they imparted that medicine part of the therapy. So of course we know of laying on of the hands, we know intention, but he wondered, is there something about the harmonics and the music, the songs? And right next to me, I happen to have a Tibetan bowl. And of course, we know that certain frequencies have certain impacts. We know that NASA, you know, actually has researched certain frequencies for certain organs. So the industry of $500 billion for botanical medicine, why does it surprise us? It's actually what has sustained all of our ancestors through the millennia until modern medicine, or what's termed allopathic medicine. Once again, I have a DEA number. There's a time and place for that. There's a time and place for surgery. So it's all about a collective, how do we help the patient down the road? And I share with my patients, there's proactive medicine, that's avoiding the ER. And then there's the ER where you're sitting there reactive and saying, am I next yet? So the bioavailability of botanicals can be challenging. We know, for example, berberine can be challenging. We know turmeric definitely can. And so they've actually found that certain frequencies imparted acoustically can change the molecular resonance of a botanical. And that change of the molecular resonance actually, and I'll show you the research from a pharmacokinetic perspective, actually allows for greater bioavailability and longer mean residence within the body. So allowing for smaller dosing or a higher dose with less pills, and also greater compliance. We all know when I was a young doctor in 1992, I said, take the pills 4 times a day. Yeah, compliance 0. Take them 3 times a day. Compliance goes up a little. It takes twice a day. And we think of it like an azithromycin Z-Pack. 2 pills the first day, 1 pill thereafter. Pretty high compliance. You do Keflex, Ceflexin, you say, okay, Q 6 hours. Well, okay, compliance is a little bit more sketch. So the concept, which has been identified and researched by Shafi and his team in India, is that there is a way to tune an herb without changing its chemistry. There's no liposome, there's no phytosome, there's no piperine or black pepper to enhance it. It is literally just tuned from a resonance perspective at the quantum level. And so it's kind of interesting and compelling. And knowing that I have a speaker after me and knowing we're running a little late, I'm going to pass over some of the gentle stuff and go into the more hardcore science. And once again, all content, all research, my email's in the message. You're welcome to email me and I'll share whatever you would like. So it's all about concentration, or is it? And is it about vibration and electrical conductivity? We all learned in our physiology and our basic sciences about the millivoltage difference between the inside, intracellular, and extracellular side of a cell. There's millivolts. So are we electrical beings? We now know that the mitochondria speak through light as well. We also know that the mitochondria have T3 thyroid receptors at the mitochondrial DNA. But in order to take care of a thyrocyte, a thyroid cell, well, you have to have mitochondria, have that energy. But then you need to have the thyroid in order to help drive the mitochondria. Go figure. The interconnectivity of even our internal systems are 37.2 trillion cells. So what we're going to discuss today is about working through a botanical, maybe more from a traditional perspective. Much like the Tibetan singing bowl next to me, much like a mantra, much like indigenous cultures, there was often music and hymns and vibrations that went along with the imparting of medicine. But now we take it to the science side. So they used AI-driven molecular modeling. They go ahead and use that kind of technology. They use CAD technology, but they also then measure with Raman spectral mapping the before and after of a plant. And when they've done these studies, head-to-head comparisons of, let's say, a 2.5% ashwagandha extract and or the same kind of extract, apple to apple, and then imparted this acoustic resonance, you'll see that the modeling is remarkably different from a pharmacokinetic perspective. And so they're GMP, they're AI guided, they're computer aided drug design, and they have a pharmacist on board, they have PhDs on board, lots of researchers. And so the reproducibility has been there, and TÜV Rheinland, third party, has confirmed that this occurs. And also what's interesting is that when it's been imparted, it has great shelf life, great longevity, because it actually ends up being put in a crystalline form and it retains this acoustic imprint. And the example that's often given, and there's a great video I can share with you, is the example of a spring. I have a spring here and I put a load on it, then that load is waiting to be released. And now that load can be crystallized, and which is an example of the botanical, then we can actually see that it can be imparted and it's waiting to be imparted into the body. So there's a load and a preload and that rhythmic acoustic infusion that occurs. And there are cell-based activity studies, there's KCO2 permeability studies, and there's an in vitro and uptake stimulation, as well as human pharmacokinetics, which we'll talk about. So once again, the concept here is follow the research, study the research, and we're sometimes blinded by research. Like, I have to see the research. We've all seen things in our clinical practice which are not fully documented sufficiently to be parts of standard of care. But this is how we move the needle. The present is the future. We in clinical practice and research models are the future that are going to push the question of what if. And when I was a much younger gentleman, I was lecturing at the local MD medical school, and I was lecturing to the fourth year graduating medical class. And my question was, are you folks not smarter, better educated, better diagnosticians, and have a larger armament of things in your clinical toolbox from a therapeutic perspective compared to people that sat in these same chairs 5 years ago? Of course, for all of us, when we graduated, we were at the top of whatever it was our knowledge base. But I said, don't forget, 5 years from now, people will feel exactly the same way as you feel about people that graduated 5 years ago, unless you're a perpetual learner. You all, as I've listened to you this morning, you're perpetual learners. I'm here in Oregon, and I've thoroughly enjoyed the speakers, the questions. I've enjoyed Kevin with his commentary and everybody's commentary. Just absolutely amazing. Great thinkers. So let's look at berberine. So you can see here the area under the curve with either a standardized berberine hydrochloride, 500 milligrams, or berberine QA, which has been acoustically tuned. And you can see the area under the curve is remarkable, but then also very important, you can see the mean resonance. So even at the very end of a 24-hour window of time, it is actually still very pronounced within the body. So this was a berberine study, 30 healthy adults enrolled, 24 completed, randomized, double-blind, crossover, single study, and the plasma berberine qualified. It's like, but wow, look at the therapeutic dose here. And even throughout the entirety of the day, until you hit about the 16-hour mark, it's at the peak level of where you would have gotten the berberine. So we're looking at metabolic disease. We look at berberine from the PPAR pathways. We look at all the molecular concepts. But can you imagine having that on tap within the bloodstream to help with the physiological outcomes? So it's a concept, this conjecture as to what could be the benefits here long term. And for us that formulate, I've done a lot of formulating in my life for various professional companies, is now all of a sudden I don't need as much real estate in a capsule to get the job done. Or if I'm going to deliver it in a gummy or as a liquid, I don't have to worry about masking, covering up some of the lovely taste of herbal medicine, because it doesn't always taste as good as our taste profiles have been trained. Then we look at ashwagandha, and we see the same thing, randomized, double-blind, crossover design, 16 healthy adults, 15 completed the study, and a 7-day washout before they crossed over. And you can see, once again, the higher peak levels. But there's no chemistry change. There's no changes in the bonds. There's no addition of a liposomal phytosome. There is nothing other than it's just tuned from a frequency perspective. Pun intended, if you catch my vibe. And so it's like, but don't we catch vibes all the time? You're walking down the street like, I better cross the street. Oh, I don't get a very good feeling. We have all these things that we can say we can pull from the ethers, but the ethers don't exist. It's not scientifically proven. I'm not proposing that the ethers exist or not exist, but there's knowledge beyond us. And look at our ancestral side of the Mayans, Göbekli Tepe, the pyramids of Giza. I'm off to Greece in a couple of days here, and of course, the ancient Greeks and Romans and all the phenomenal people that predated us that knew things, figured out things, which we're still kind of scratching our head about. So it's kind of compelling. But once again, ashwagandha, berberine, and now curcumin QA. Same thing, just a plant material, acoustically tuned. And if you think about our chemistry days, we know about Lewis structures. We know that the best way to describe a molecule is at its different energetic frequencies, not changing the bonds, but changing the molecular resonance. And this is what we're doing here is the molecular resonance of the plants are changing. So if you look here at the mean levels, basically, even at the 24-hour mark, we're actually having similar to the peak levels of an otherwise standardized curcumin, 95% curcuminoids. And once again, 65 healthy adults, 60 completed, and as you can see, the outcomes. What's intriguing from a summary slide perspective is we got the berberine, we got the ashwagandha, we got the curcumin, and you can see upwards of 20x fold in terms of area under the curve. So it's compelling to say the least. And it's a matter of sustained levels. And how does our body interact? We've talked about drug interactions. In fact, my first book that I ever wrote, and it was in 1993, was on drug nutrient interactions. This was before our databases. Drugs are powerful. They're biochemical agents, which are going to, if they're strong enough to help us, they're strong enough to harm us because we're all working on dosing the right amount of dose. And sometimes in the westernized model, we shove opposed to nudge. And so the concept of using less to get more speaks volumes to the concept that more is not always better. And we shouldn't live in a supersize me world or concept that I need more pills. And listening to the lecture on homeopathy, of course, we know that a little bit can go a long ways in a wholly different clinical model. So there were no adverse effects in the studies. And once again, the number of people that completed the studies, the implications are lower dosing, increased efficacy per milligram, which also from an environmental perspective means less harvesting, less input of environmental aspects of carbon input, human labors, and once again, enhanced formulation predictability and differentiation between extracts alone. It's also a great marketing point of differentiation. Once again, that we're working on an energetic level because we're all energetic beings. And so it's kind of intriguing that the future is being changed by asking the question of how did it work for Ayurvedic medicine 2,000, 2,500 years ago? And likewise, how did it work here in North America with indigenous cultures? Likewise, the Amazonian and every culture, and the fact that there's more to the picture than we perceive from a myopic westernized view. So the implications is we have capsule optimization, simplified delivery, combination, and of course, clearly a competitive edge. Here in North America, it's not been delivered to the marketplace yet, either from a consumer perspective or from a healthcare provider perspective. It's actually just entering the marketplace here. And the first person that delivers it to the marketplace clearly will have an upper hand. But I think the other big things, I've done a lot of product delivery for children or oral deliveries. And one of the things I found over my 33 plus years of clinical practice, writing 300 national articles, as well as my 18 books, is that people are always interested. And most of us are just grown up little children with a lot of burdens and a lot of responsibility and a lot of education, of course. But my patients will say, I went to Costco. Those gummy vitamins are really, really good. And compliance goes up when they taste good because we're little kids. We want to have something that tastes good. And if all of a sudden we have pill fatigue and we swallow so many pills, do I really want to take my supplements today? Do I really want, of course, we're supplementing a good diet. We're not substituting for it. It's like, okay, so it offers a versatility here. So the company and the products are GMP, they're ISO compliant, they're halal, they're kosher, and the energy specification has been tested. It has a spectral fingerprint, Raman tested, and also to Ryland, externally tested, and it's science with humility. And the proprietors, the founder, was actually not a chemist. He's mechanically inclined. He's a mechanics, for lack of a better word. He's looking at mechanical engineering and those aspects, but he wondered, what was it? And is there something there in our traditions that we have missed? And the answer was yes, and he found it. And so, as you can see, once again, to recap, improved bioavailability, very transparent validation. Of course, C of A is all over the place, certificates of analysis. And they're looking to see how do we improve the data sets. And the rationale process, all very clear. And the concept here, and like I said, I've been very impressed with the group that's been asking the questions, the presenters, is we're the future of medicine. We're going to ask the questions, and I always go to Madame Curie, which was the mother of radium and X-rays, and think of all the diagnostic CT scans and all this. If she had been just scrubbing cauliflower and broccoli in her kitchen sink, where would we be? Likewise, Linus Pauling, Oregon State University, double Nobel Prize winner, and one was on the ionic bond. What happens if he hadn't thought about the ionic bond? It's like, once again, we have to ask those questions in clinical practice. And once we observe something, then we can take it to clinical research and outcomes and document what we already see working. So I'm going to leave it on the note of thank you for being you. We are the vessels for hope. Together, we are the transformation of healthcare and the future of healthcare. And when I graduated, I was very fortunate to have a mentor, a senior associate in my practice. He had practiced 41 years. He was dual degreed in medicine. And I could walk down the hall to Dr. John H. Jeffries and ask those questions. Well, now we're these people, and we are the ones mentoring. So let's build what's next for our patients, for our planet, and for the future. I'm going to open up for questions.